What is a concept album? Commonly, a concept album is defined as a group of songs that together have a greater theme or idea more than they do individually. Instead of your album being a series of greatest hits or unreleased songs that your fans are excited to see, a concept album instead has all the songs connected through a single thread. That thread being the theme, the central idea, or the concept. That definition, however, is just generally the definition that the, musical zeitgeist has for a concept album. But in my opinion, there are two distinct types of concept albums. The first is an album with a central theme, just a general idea that all of the songs follow, they don't all have to be connected or perfectly transition into each other, but they're all centered around this one idea. Or an album with a story, an album that has a distinct beginning, middle, and end, has characters, has climaxes, has lows, has highs, has moments, is a narrative, and not just by accident, but entirely on purpose. And I love those types of concept albums. They are just so amazing and so insane. They blow my mind every time, managing to, fit amazing songs, whether it's bangers or ballads, into a legitimately hard-gripping story that is very memorable. One of my favorite concept albums is The Black Parade by My Chemical Romance, detailing the story of the patient dying from cancer and being met by death through the image of a parade, the titular Black Parade. And every single song kind of perfectly flows into it and creates an amazing story that I love to this day. A more modern concept album that some of you may know is Tyler, the Creator's Igor, detailing the story of, again, the titular Igor, a story about heartbreak with dramatic highs, dramatic lows, and an entire plot that spans through an epically self-produced album. The Black Parade and Igor are some of my favorite albums of all time. However, today, we're going to be talking about probably my favorite album of all time, and my favorite concept album of all time. An album not from a major artist, not from like a major star in alternative music or hip hop, but instead an underground musician that means the world to me. Today we're talking about the greatest album you've never heard of, Quadeca's I Didn't Mean to Haunt You. Before we continue with this video, I want to give a trigger warning to some of the topics that will be talked about in this video. Haunt You is a pretty dark album and talks about stuff such as death, grief, and self-harm. If you are sensitive to these topics, please be aware when watching or choose a different video or whatnot, but just, be aware that these topics will be discussed in this video for a while. Viewer discretion is advised. Hey storytellers, Chillixion here, back from hell. I'm back from hell. And today's video is a bit different than usual. I know you guys are used to me talking about animation, comics, or video games, but you know what? Storytelling can find itself in all different mediums, and the one we're gonna be talking about today is music. If you know me personally, you know I'm a big fan of music. Hell, if you've been subscribed to the channel for a while, you've known that this channel once hosted music. I still have music on all streaming services, so if you want to listen to it, just go look up Chillixion on anything you listen to music on. And in my genuine opinion, music is an amazing way of telling stories, whether it is short-term, real personal stories, or even artistic, fictional stories. Through music, you can tell whatever story you want. And concept albums is, in my opinion, the best way to tell stories, at least long-term stories in the form of music. And my favorite albums always tend to be concept albums. I don't know, they just interest me a lot more than, your typical greatest hits compilation. Like I said, we're gonna be talking about my favorite concept album, I Didn't Mean to Haunt You, by Quadeca. But before we even talk about the first track on the album, let's talk about the artist himself. Quadeca began, primarily as a FIFA YouTuber, and then, moved to the music side of things, creating styles of rap videos, and at some point a KSI diss track, which is actually how I found him. But then eventually he started, just making more music, not so much attached to types of videos or trends, and was just making his own stuff. And at this point, he has created, 3 albums that are pretty distant from the YouTube stuff, and I don't even like to label him as a YouTube musician. I actually don't like to label a lot of musicians from YouTube as YouTube musicians, just because that seems so demeaning. Like, I don't know, when people think YouTube musician or YouTube rapper, they think of a Logan Paul or a KSI or a Jake Paul, just kind of people with already a good amount of money who are just, trying to make a quick buck off of, a popular trend, which would be music, because music is endlessly popular. And Quadeca, in my opinion, is an artist, but he's not the only one. There are so many amazing musical artists on YouTube that I think deserve a lot more praise than just being called YouTube musicians. And even though it's important to know who Quadeca is and where Quadeca came from, I don't want to dwell on this past too much. I think the album stands entirely on its own and doesn't need, information about who Quadeca is to be a great piece of art. But if you do want to know more about Quadeca's musical evolution, he started making music like this. At the start of FIFA. And then right before this album was making music like this. That was from Quadeca's second studio album, From Me to You, which in my opinion isn't one of my favorites. I like a lot of the songs from it, but as a whole project, it's just personally not for me. He began to tease Haunt You after the deluxe edition of the second studio album of his, where he was, getting ready to work on a new big project, and where a lot of these sounds and ideas were already made by this point. I'm saying this because during the production of Haunt You, Quadeca was faced with some legitimately tragic news. Another rapper and friend of Quadeca's, Sad Frosty, had passed away. And this made Quadeca come out of hiding and, talk about the event in question and, to just make a statement as content creators do. I'm not here to psychoanalyze an artist. That's not my job, and I feel a little gross doing it, but I do want to acknowledge at least the historical context of the album, and that during its production, Quadeca had to go with some real grief that we, the audience, were also aware of. But due to the subject matter of the album, I am acknowledging this so that moving forward, it perhaps provides a greater context to the art itself. When the album was released, Quadeca posted this on Instagram, basically being a big thank you to the fans, but also describing his production process, saying that he would spend 16-hour non-stop studio days and ended up losing 40 pounds during the production. Now, it's essential for me to say, this is not healthy, but it is also not glorified. Quadeca acknowledges that it is not healthy, and hopefully he has gotten a lot better. But I know a lot of you are antsy. We've been talking a lot about the artist and the production of the album and what a concept album is, but I haven't talked about the album once. So let's get to it. I Didn't Mean to Haunt You is an album from the perspective of a ghost. It's the story of a ghost roaming the afterlife and observing his loved ones after taking his own life to suicide. There's a lot more details that I want to get into track by track, but as a general overview, that's what the album is about. It is a pretty heavy topic, and it is handled with, honestly, in my opinion, excellent grace. It doesn't just feel like an artist trying to be pretentious or edgy for the sake of it, but instead feels like someone sharing their real emotions and their real experiences through their art in the most raw and authentic way possible. And in terms of genre, it's an alternative record that mixes elements of hip-hop, folk music, shoegaze, and tons of other genres I'm probably not even thinking of right now. It's a little under an hour, and if you haven't listened to it and this interests you, please go listen to it right now. You will not regret it. But if you're still on the fence, don't worry, because we're about to break down this album track by track, figuring out how it functions musically and narratively. You ready? Well, you ready for the breakdown? Well, I have a question for you, my dear friend. Are you ready to click that like button? Got you again. I'm so good at this. But seriously though, it really helps me out and it helps out the channel. There has been a ton of attention on the content as of late through the One Piece video and the Superman video. You guys have been loving it. I've been showing tons of support, and don't worry, I am, keeping with my promises. Expect more One Piece and more comic book content very, very soon. This is just something a little experimental. Let's get this video to 45 likes, okay? Is that a little too crazy for this video? Maybe? Who knows? Support the content and support the creator. It's because of storytellers like you that more videos get made. Anyway, let's get back to the video. I'm standing now. So, I Didn't Mean to Haunt You, this album. First up, the cover art. It is, okay, to be fair, I'm not looking at anything. This is just a green screen, but the cover art is beautiful. It's done by, can't remember their name, but this artist right here, and it is just perfectly abstract and, fits the vibe color-wise and design-wise, but also, if you really look at it, kind of clearly tells you what story is going on here. And there's tons of alternative covers here. Put them on screen. Pussy! So we're gonna be going through the album song by song and talking about why I like each song and why it works and how it fits into the greater story. So yeah, this video is a mess. This track 1, Sorry for Dying. Sorry for Dying starts with this sort of synthy kind of sound, which is the exact sound that was played at the end of the For Me to You Deluxe Edition YouTube video teasing the next album. Just these synths shows you the beginning of this album's very, very interesting instrumentation, because it's not like typical, it's not super clean, it's a bit rough, it's a bit fuzzy, and it sounds almost ghost-like. And you're gonna hear it throughout the rest of this album, whether it is weird sounding synths, vinyl crackle and vinyl pop, or just stuff sounding lower quality for the purpose of creating this ghostly undead atmosphere. However, aside from all of this very cool music nerd stuff, Sorry for Dying in terms of the story is directly after the main character, who I will be referring to as Quadeca for the purpose of simplicity, commits suicide. After he describes his plight, describing it as a fuel tank, saying that perhaps everything was all in his head, he realizes that he has already done it. He has already passed, and he is sorry for dying, beginning the very long journey that is his self-reflection immediately after the action. Musically, I think this is a pretty cool opening track. I usually think the beginning and the ending of your albums are some of the most important musically for a new audience, and I think this kind of works. There are better beginnings to albums in my opinion, but it's not too harsh, it's not too intense, and it introduces you to some of the diet demo versions of some things, whether it is the introspection of the topic or the introduction to the topic itself, or even musically in the way that his lyrics are still more clear than some other songs that are later in the album. And if you're not a fan of this album and are trying to be convinced by me, I'm going to be honest, if you are not really sure if you're going to like this music, don't listen to this one first. That's not a good choice. Listen to it when you listen to the whole album, but you should probably listen to one of the singles first. And the single I think you should listen to, this video is oh my god, this video is the single I think you should listen to first is actually track 2, Tell Me a Joke. Tell Me a Joke is my favorite song off the album, period. I know usually I would have fanfare or I'd build up to it, but I'm just gonna say I love this song and I am obsessed with this song. This song is using the idea of jokes and comedians and telling a joke. The joke in this situation being, from what I see, the life that Quadeca lived. And while I think this topic is not only relatable in the way that sometimes, people in dark times will feel as if, their life is nothing but humor, or their life is nothing but a joke, or it's not serious, or it's over, this hits a lot different for me because I am a performer. In the same way that Quadeca is also a performer. Since he was a young child, he's been making content for the internet and has had, honestly, way more eyes on him than I've ever had on me. So I don't get, that sort of intensity. But it is this very similar feeling when you perform, when you are an artist, when you have sort of performative skills where you perhaps put on an act and put on a character. Sometimes it can feel like you are always putting on that act. Sometimes it can feel like you are always putting on that character. I mean, if I'm being real, what you're seeing now, this is Chillixion. I don't act like this in real life. That'd be fucking stupid. But I think the ideas of reflecting on life and regrets sort of as a bad performance or a forced performance is super, super interesting. Plus, this song is such an earworm. It is such a bug. I mean, just the main chorus of ha, 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 love to the grave. Ugh, it's amazing. Also, very fun fact about the song that not a lot of people talk about. This song is in 3/4 time. What is 3/4 time? 4 beats in a measure and quarter note gets a whole beat. Oh my god. Oh. 4/4 time is 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a good song. You should listen to it. It's the best song. Also, hearing it live, I sobbed. It was really good. Next song is Don't Mind Me, which isn't my least favorite song on the album, which I think is a great way to starting it, but it is probably one of the least memorable tracks on here, just because every other track is kind of way better. But Don't Mind Me is still pretty good. It has some nice melodies, does some very interesting things with some synths, and has a, in my opinion, pretty catchy hook, but it's not varied enough or dynamic within, you know, what's going on in the song to really stand out. Narrative-wise, Don't Mind Me is Quadeca as a ghost observing his loved ones currently going through grief and, you know, just communicating to them, don't mind me, don't worry about me, do not go through grief. I am dead and this is what I want. And this is where it's very interesting because the album is a legitimate narrative. It legitimately has an arc. Quadeca as a character is going to go through a positive change. Even though it would be a lot easier for Quadeca's character to not go through a change and to just have every song in the exact same like tone and with the exact same idea. Change of the tone and the change of the idea is what makes it a narrative, is what makes it interesting. Because you are gonna see this character grow and are therefore seeing the artist grow song by song. And while that does risk some songs seeming a bit odd in retrospect, it is better for the story as a whole. Track 4 is Picking Up Hands. Picking Up Hands is a really, really good song that uses an acoustic guitar and has probably one of my favorite melodies. It's the room, it's the wall, it's the poster and all on the floor. It's the shadow we wait, it's the footsteps I take and put them back on the floor. It's so good. I think Picking Up Hands is also in 3/4. Oh my god. I just realized it and I think I like waltzes. I love a good waltz.
Barely made it.
But the song is really good, and for the visual album, which hopefully I have right here, it is the track that, in my opinion, has some of the best visuals with this cute ass f***ing dog. Love this dog. But the song is really good as it describes looking through your old things and looking through your old memories and reflecting on them as the dead, as someone who can no longer experience these things. Narrative-wise, Picking Up Hands is the end of Act 1. Now, I'm not sure if Quadeca has stated, you know, where the 3 acts lie within the album. This is simply based on my own taking of the story and my own analysis. But the end of Act 1 is typically the point of no return within any story, whether it is the hero's journey or something far more simple. And here is the point of no return. This is where Quadeca is beginning to fully regret his suicide. He is now reaching a point of emotional no return. The next song and beginning of Act 2 is going to be the second single, well, first that was released, but second single I'm talking about, Born Yesterday. Born Yesterday is a lot more popular of a track, but isn't personally one of my favorites. It is a song that is pretty catchy and has a very good earworm, but that earworm just isn't, you know, in the area of music that I really attach myself to. Maybe it's because it's not a fucking waltz. I don't know. Maybe if it was in 3/4 time, I would love it. But I still think it's an amazing song. The visuals for it are outstanding, and the lyrics themselves are also really good. Born Yesterday delves more into the idea of regret. While Picking Up Hands was looking at it through the perspective of your childhood memories, Born Yesterday is more specifically looking at the people around you. And in particular, Quadeca's mother. I wasn't born yesterday. I think you're goddamn lying. Even though Quadeca's mother wants to pretend that she is fine, she is not fine because she misses her son. And even though I'm not the biggest fan of this song, I cannot lie, the second half gets me every single time, because while Quadeca is singing the final sort of bridge chorus, it sounds like he is legitimately crying on the beat. And if there's one way you can get me emotional, is that if you sound emotional within your music. But Born Yesterday is an absolutely amazing song. If you're still on the fence at this point, go listen to Born Yesterday. If you don't like it, you don't like the album, sorry. Track number 6 is going to be The Memories We Lost in Translation, which in my opinion is the perfect in-between track from Born Yesterday into the rest of the album. The perfect thrust into Act 2. There are lyrics in this song. I don't know them, and I kind of want to keep it that way because it is just so musically interesting. It's a pretty short song, but its build-up just sounds like an orchestra getting ready to play, except none of them are real instruments. It's not an orchestra of the instruments you and I know, but instead an orchestra of the dead. Track 7, House Settling, is a fan favorite, and that's because it is featuring artist Danny Brown. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of Danny Brown. You know, I like his music, but it's not something that I listen to all the time, but I can really appreciate the fact that Quad got someone like him on the album. And Danny Brown does amazing. His rap verse is Really, really good. But what is House Settling about? Well, don't worry, viewer, I got you. House Settling is... I actually don't know what it's about. Apparently, House Settling is about Quadeca trying to kill his family so they can be in the afterlife with him. But it is a good song. I don't listen to it all the time. It's not my personal thing, not my personal style, but I can really appreciate it, especially because it actually gives you insight into perhaps how Quadeca went away. Because when the album starts, we know that it starts with Quadeca already dead. He has passed away. And it's sort of a mystery box to, you know, for us to be like, oh, did he kill himself? How did he kill himself? And this track showcases that Quadeca is manipulating stuff like the oven and the windows and filling the place with carbon monoxide. And also Danny Brown raps as carbon monoxide, which I didn't mention. That's insane to me. So if you're a big fan of Danny Brown, you might like this track. A lot of the songs previously have been sort of, you know, alternative leaning or folk leaning or shoegaze leaning. This one is the closest thing to, you know, classic Quadeca hip hop. Not as the track is continuing to go through Act 2, you know, after the insane decision to try to poison his own family, Quadeca is instead looking at the other regrets that he is having in the afterlife, and lyrically, again, just like the last track, is giving us a bit of an insight of how he perhaps may have taken his own life. Because while the last track talks about carbon monoxide, this track, Knots, is describing the knots on a noose. But this track is just really, really good. It has tons of energy. It is really intense, and lyrically, you know, also gets pretty intense. Quadeca played this live when I went, and Brody went fucking crazy. If we look at story-wise, we see a 3 acts, you know, Act 1, we sort of go here, we ended up at the point of no return. Okay, in Act 2, we left from that, and we sort of entered our new world and, you know, rummied with the themes a little bit. But now we have entered Act 3. And what happens at Act 3? What happens? The climax. Fantasy World might be the best song on the album. Tell Me a Joke is my favorite song on the album, but Fantasy World is probably the best one. It starts with this piano, and the vocals are very, very clear. Clearer than they've ever been in the album, because this represents Quadeca being alive. Fantasy World serves as a flashback for the entire album, describing moments before his decision. And musically, Quadeca is doing amazing things here, going with very, very minimal instrumentation and very subdued singing style allows you to sort of be in this calm place with him, in this tense place with him, okay? Because it's not the prettiest singing and it's not the most beautiful, luscious piano sound, but it sounds personal, it sounds real, and it sounds emotional. In my opinion, no matter what I do, I'm not going to describe this song in the proper way. And that's not just because this video is actually running pretty long, but I just can't do it justice. His poetry, his singing skills, describing it like broken up and f***ed up isn't going to do it justice. But I'll say this. The first time I really heard Fantasy World, I didn't get it. I didn't really get that this was the climax. But after sitting on the album for a little bit and playing it on my headphones alone in my room, going through the entire story, the highs, the emotions, the regrets, the melancholy, the introspection, getting to this point, to this flashback, where even though there's no visuals, all you have is the audio and a weird abstract depiction of events. When you get to that climax, oh boy, is Quadeca in his bag. The ending of Fantasy World is not only, in my opinion, genuine musical perfection, but it might be the greatest way to describe storytelling within the musical form. I think Haunt You actually works with the 3-act structure pretty perfectly, hence why I think it's an amazing story. But the way that Fantasy World builds up to the climax and reaches to this intense moment, only to trickle down and decay by the end, is beautiful. And the most insane thing is that this is a flashback to the story. Even though the ending is beautiful, it is still kind of a loss, leading us into the rest of Act 3, where our protagonist has to truly find a resolution. That is storytelling. Next is track 10, Fractions of Infinity, and this is one of my favorite songs. I think it's actually one of the most slept on songs in the album, but I love it. Before we even talk about what the story of this song is, I'm gonna say this features the Sunday Service Choir, Kanye West's Sunday Service Choir. And no, that doesn't mean that Quadeca is buddy-buddy with Mr. Problematic Kanye West, but that does mean that Quadeca went above and beyond and found just the right people to get the sound that he wanted. That is an achievement in my opinion. They are not featured on many things. They're featured on this album and Donda. This is where Quadeca as a character finally is done regretting and is finally done reflecting on his past and begins to look into the future, which for him would be going into this idea of heaven or this idea of God. Now, I'm not here to talk about religion, okay? I'm not here to disclose what my religion is, and I don't really care what your religion is. But within the context of this story, in this world, there is, I guess, God. And Quadeca's ghost is finally thinking about the ideas of God and the idea of accepting himself into divinity, but also thinking, will God punish me for my sins? And you know, not to say the obvious, but obviously no one who's listening to this album is a ghost, I think. But there are a lot of people who listen to this album and who can find relatability in this song, into looking at God, into looking at their past sins, into looking in their future and accepting their idea of God, their idea of a heaven, and their idea of an afterlife, despite what they are doing and despite who they are. And here is where I'm going to interject some personal analysis. I believe those words don't do you justice is actually positive within the song. I believe the choir, whether representing a choir or Quadeca's family or some idea of God, represents something outside of Quadeca that is telling him that he was worth a lot more when he was alive, that he was worth a lot, and therefore going into this new afterlife he will continue to be worth a lot, that even in death he will find some sort of closure with himself, maybe not solving the issues that he had, but being able to, in a way, live with himself as the dead. And the final song is Cassini's Division, which, in my opinion, is actually my least favorite song on the album. I know that's a popular opinion just because it's the most weird song, but it is also the ending song, and doing endings right is hard. Leaving this purgatory state, leaving this state of regret, looking upon his family, looking upon his past, and instead entering into a greater plane. That is what the song is about. I don't want to spoil too much about this song, okay? I think it is something you should experience, and I think this entire album is something you should experience yourself. I know this video is not going to get a lot of views. It's kind of a weird, kooky video where I've changed positions and I'm talking about an album, but this is something I really, really love. I love I Didn't Mean to Haunt You. I think it tells an excellent story. Okay, I think it is probably my favorite concept album, has some of my favorite songs, and is just so interesting from an audio point of view and from a music point of view, because it's not just a series of 11 great songs that also work as a story. It is a series of 11 songs that were designed to tell a story. I know some people will not like this album because Quadeca's vocals are hard to hear, or some things are unclear or too harsh or too intense. However, in my opinion, it's those things that makes the album just amazing and outstanding. Music is really personal to me. I love making music. I love listening to music. I love talking about music. So when something like this occurs, something that connects to me, something that tells great stories through music, something that I think is actually pretty difficult to do, I just think it's cool and I can't help but appreciate it. So if you made it to the end of this video, let's sit down actually. If you've made it to the end of this video and you didn't click off because this video sucked, thank you, honestly, genuinely thank you. I love music, I love art, I love all types of things, and I use this channel to talk about stuff that I like. I know we've been getting a lot of attention recently, like I said, and I think a bit of that scares me. It scares me to not talk about stuff that's a bit different, but I had a great time making this video. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about one of my favorite albums because it makes me really happy, and I think there is something to learn here, that through music, you can tell stories. You don't have to just make greatest hits. You don't have to just make radio bangers. You can really tell inventive, unique, and creative stories through tons of different mediums. Not just through the words that you write, but the instruments that you choose, how you mix them, how you play them, and the sequencing of the album. I Didn't Mean to Haunt You, to me, is a prime example of the endless creative potential that music has. And I love that. I'm not a music reviewer. I'm just a guy who likes music, okay? And if you like music too, thank you. If you like this video, despite how insanely chaotic it's been, click that like button. It shows support for the channel and shows me that you guys want more videos just like this for some reason. 45 likes is our goal. And while you're down there, click that subscribe button. You know, we have reached 3K, which I'm super happy about. So let's keep growing. Let's try to get to 5K, maybe 10K. And thank you guys again for showing support for the recent content. The One Piece video has been doing amazing. If you haven't seen that, please go check it out. I put a lot of effort into it and it's shown great results. But storytellers, that's gonna be it for me. I'm probably going to go listen to the album again because it is absolutely amazing and I'm so excited for his next one. Okay, well, I hope all of you had a damn good one. Peace.